Welcome back to Elevate Academy. Today we're going through trig reduction. I'm going to start off by understanding the cast diagram. So A here simply means that all trig ratios being sine, cos, and tan, they're all positive here. F means in the second quadrant that only sine is positive once we reduce, the second quadrant being from 90 degrees to 180 degrees. And T means that only tan is positive when we are reducing between 180 degrees and 270 degrees. And here we have the fourth quadrant, and this is the C, which means that only cos is positive when we are reducing from 270 degrees to 360 degrees. So when we're given a question, let's take an example, sine 140. When we have sine 140 degrees, we're going to ask ourselves three questions. These three questions we have to ask whenever we get a question. And the first question we ask ourselves is, which quadrant are we in? So we get that from our angle that's given to us. So this is our given angle. So our given angle here is 140. So we know that our given angle is clearly between 90 degrees and 180 degrees. And we see the next question we ask ourselves is, when we figure out which quadrant we're in, is it a plus or minus? So since this is sine and we are in the F quadrant or the second quadrant, we see that sine is positive. So we can say equal to sine. Now, how do we work out what angle it is that comes that goes within the brackets that's in this formula? And we find that using this formula here, 180 minus the given angle. In this case, the given angle is 140. So we can say sine 180 minus the given angle of 140, and that equals to a positive sine 40. So I hope that that makes sense. So what we will notice is that the second quadrant and the fourth quadrant works very similarly in the sense that we take 180 minus the given angle. Here we take 360 minus the given angle. But in the third quadrant, we do the opposite. We take the given angle minus 180. So let's go through a few examples. We see here we have cos 210. So the first question we're going to ask ourselves, following the process, which quadrant are we in? And we see the given angle here is 210. So we realize we are in the third quadrant, or the quadrant where tan only is positive. So what do we have here? We have cos. So already when going to the second question, is it a positive or negative? We know it's going to be negative cos. And the reason is that's the reduction formula in this for cos in this third quadrant. Cos 180 plus theta is equal to negative cos theta. So how do we work out the theta? We need to use the formula of given angle minus 180. So in this case, given angle minus 180, we're going to have, okay, let's go from step to step. We're going to have negative cos. How do we know negative cos? Because we found out we're in this quadrant, and in this quadrant, when we're reducing cos, we're left with a negative cos. And how do we work out what's within the brackets? We simply take our, in this case, the given angle, which is 210, and we subtract 180, and we will be left with negative cos 30. Please note the difference between this example. Sine 140, here we took 180 minus the given angle, which is part of the question, 140, and we were left with sine 40. 180 minus 140. Here in the third quadrant, which is the only quadrant where we do things differently, we say, okay, here we take the given angle, which was part of the question, and then minus 180, and we have to negative cos 30. Let's go to the next question, sine 315. Again, we follow the same procedure. Which quadrant is this? This is the fourth quadrant between 270 and 360. In that quadrant, is it a positive or negative? How are we going to find that out? We're going to see. Okay, so in this quadrant, we have a sine. So the reduction formula for sine in this quadrant is negative sine. We didn't even need to remember this, all because we know that the only ratio that's positive in this fourth quadrant is cos. So obviously sine and tan will be negative. So we can say that's great, that's negative sine. And how do we work out our angle? In this quadrant, we say 360 minus the given angle. So we take 360 minus our given angle, which is here is 315 degrees, minus 315 degrees. And we are left with negative sine 45 degrees. Okay, so that's relatively simple. Now let's look at our next example. This is where things get a little bit more interesting. I know some people try and figure this out using this negative angle, and we know that when we have a positive angle, we are going in this direction anti-clockwise, and then we can say when we have a negative angle, we are going clockwise. But the simple solution to figure out how to deal with negative angles is just to add 360. Remember, in trig, we are working in circles. So we can add 360 an infinite amount of times, and we can subtract 360 an infinite amount of times. It's similar to multiplying by 1. It doesn't change the value of it. And if you want to, you can put this into your calculator and test it out. You can try, for example, sine 30. And when you enter that in a calculator, you should get half. Now you can try and enter sine 30 plus 360, which is sine 390, and you'll realize you get the same answer. Now you can add 360 as many times as you'd like, and you get the same answer, you get half. Or you can subtract 360 as many times as you'd like, and you get the same solution. So let's get back to the question, tan 120, minus 120. And the first thing that I do here is before we ask ourselves of the three questions that we usually ask ourselves, we need to get this into a positive angle. So what we'll do is say minus 120 plus 360. Now, as I said, we can do this as many times as we'd like. And when we add 360, we end up with tan 240. Now we get back to these three questions. And we find out which quadrant is tan 240 in. And we realize that tan 240 is in our third quadrant between 180 and 270. Okay. And what do we do then? We say, okay, that's tan 240. Now we check. Is tan positive when we reduce it in the third quadrant? Absolutely. It's the only one that is positive. So we can just say it's a positive. We know it's a positive tan. And how do we calculate the angle? The formula for this one is given angle minus 180. So the given angle here is now 240. We're going to say 240 minus 180. And we're going to be left with a positive tan 60. So I hope that helps. And we go on to the next question, which is sine 750. And that looks foreign because it's such a large number. But it is quite simple actually, because now what we're going to do here is we're going to now here we see we have a negative angle, we added 360. Here we've got an angle that's greater than 360. We can subtract 360 as many times as we'd like. So let's say sine 750 minus 360. And here we'll be left with sine 390. Now you see, once we get sine 390, it still doesn't fall within our cast diagram because our cast diagram, the maximum here is 360. So guess what? Now we can do it all over again. We can say 390 minus 360. Once again, we can subtract or add 360 as many times as we'd like. And now we see that we're left with sine 30. Now we see that we're already in the first quadrant and we already have an acute angle, so there's nothing more to do. So I hope this video helped. Stay tuned for more videos and also examples based on this question, the more advanced examples, more difficult examples that you're more likely to find in your exams. If you guys have any questions, please leave it down in the comments and I will attend to them. And yeah, if you require personal lessons, please contact the number in the description and on the screen. Thank you.